Let's look at some common patches at the Patchbay. Very obvious one is getting a signal to Pro Tools or to the multitrack. So we'll go, say we have a mic plugged into channel 11 microphone in the mic preamp, and we're going to come out and go into Pro Tools, multitrack input number 4. The patch is pretty simple. We're coming from channel out mult 11 into multitrack in number 4. Now out's always red, green's always in, so come out of channel out mult 11 into Pro Tools multitrack input number 4. Now that says multitrack tape in. This console was built when tape machines were being used for multitracks, so multitrack tape in, that's actually the input of Pro Tools. There's a very basic patch, channel out mult to multitrack in, so that's the output of the channel mic on channel 11 into track 4 in Pro Tools, multitrack in. The next patch will be a send, an auxiliary send into an effects device, and then into a line into the console. So if you're recording and you wanted to hear a bit of delay as monitor, you could set a delay signal, say on echo send number 4 or auxiliary send 4, and send that to echo device, and then plug it into line in, monitor back. Here's how we do that. Go echo ACA out 4 into the PCM90 delay unit. Out of the PCM90 into line in channel 30. Now ACA stands for Active Combining Amplifier. That's an old console, that's an old school term. That's essentially an auxiliary send. So we're coming send 4 out into the delay unit, out of the delay unit into line in number 30. We're going to go out of a strip into a compressor, out of the compressor and back into the strip. So we're going to compress a channel on the console. To do that, we're going to use an insert. Here's how it works. I've gone preamp out 22 into the compressor. Now out of the compressor to EQ in. That's an insert point for either a microphone or for a line. So if you're using a mic, you can put a compressor across it and then send that to the multitrack. Or if that's a line signal coming from the multitrack, that would be the same patch to put a compressor across it. Now I can do a different patch if I wanted to do just the line signal. And that patch would be multitrack out into the compressor, and then out of the compressor into line in. You'll notice multitrack out to line in is a normal connection in the Patchbay. I don't have to patch it. But when I plug something into line in, I've broken the normal. So I've gone out of the multitrack, which is Pro Tools in this case, into the compressor, out of the compressor into line in. So I've broken the normal and I've compressed the line signal, not the mic signal, from Pro Tools. Now we're going to take a mono signal and send it to a stereo device. So we're going to take mono auxiliary send it to a parallel or a mult it, and then put it into a stereo device. So we're going to come out of send 1 into the parallel, now I've essentially doubled send 1 here. I've got 2 of send 1 now. I'm going to go into the Sony effects unit, the M7, which has a stereo input. So now I've taken a mono signal, routed it to 2, one signal to 2. To complete the patch, I'll come out of the Sony and go into line in. So that's echo ACA out, that's active combining amplifier, send 1, into a parallel. I've split the signal into 2. Now I come out of the parallel into the stereo input of the Sony M7, out of the stereo output of the Sony M7 into 2-line in. So I've gone into 2 strips, channel 24 and 25. Now I'm going to show you the insert across the stereo bus. So let's say we're mixing on the console, we have a nice mix, we want to put a compressor across the whole stereo bus. We're going to use an insert. I'm going to show you where it is. It's stereo ACA out into a compressor, out of the compressor to stereo fader in. So I've gone stereo ACA out into the compressor. Now we're coming out of the compressor and go fader in. And that's how you put a compressor across the stereo bus. We're going to hook up the Drummer 1960 compressor, and we put it on the gear island at the back. We're going to use the tie lines to do so. Now we're going to connect the stereo compressor. We're going to use line input, and we're using red for right. And here's the left channel. Those are going to go to the patch bay. Now the output, again we're using red for right just to help us keep track. And the output, channel 1. So we've got the compressor hooked up. Now we have to put those cables into the tie lines. Now we're going to hook up the compressor to the tie lines. The input of the compressor, channel 1, is going to go into tie line 1. The input of the compressor, channel 2, is going to go to tie line 3. Now, the output of the compressor, channel 1, is going to go to tie line 2. And the output of the compressor, channel 2, is going to go to tie line 4. So, one more time. Tie line 1, out, into the compressor, out of the compressor, back to tie line 2. The right channel now. Out of tie line 3 into the compressor, out of the compressor into tie line 4. So we've gone in, out, in, out. Now it's important to write this on the front of the compressor. When you get a bunch of gear stacked up behind you, you lose track really fast. You also have to make sure, if you're an assistant engineer, that the engineer knows which is in and which is out. So if you make it 1, 2 in, 3, 4 out, or if you make it 1 in, 2 out, 3 in, 4 out, that should be clearly labeled on the front of the compressor. If we put it on top of the compressor, that's going to be instantly hidden as soon as I put another piece of gear on top. So you have to put this on the front of the compressor. Now we're back at the patch bay. We're going to complete that patch. We're going to put that drummer compressor across the stereo bus through the tie lines. So the compressor's behind us at the island. Here's how we do the patch. We're going to go stereo ACA out into the tie lines, which go into the compressor. So here we go. Stereo ACA out 1, or left, into tie line 1. Stereo ACA out right into tie line 3. Those are the inputs of the compressor in the tie lines. Now we come out of the compressor. Compressor out, left channel into tie line 2. And tie line 2 goes back into the bus insert. And then we come out tie line 4, so it's going out of the compressor into tie line 4, here, out of tie line 4, into the stereo bus insert. So we've hooked up a tie lines using a stereo compressor across the stereo bus. Now I'm going to do that one more time. It's a little complicated. So out of the stereo bus, stereo ACA out into tie line 1. Now on the I line, tie line 1 goes out into the compressor. So we've hooked up from out of the stereo bus into tie line 1, out of tie line 1 into the compressor. Now we come out of the compressor into tie line 2. We're going to go out of tie line 2 back into the stereo bus. In, out, that's a left channel. Now we're going to go in, out with the right channel. So we come out of the compressor into tie line 4, and then out of tie line 4 into the stereo bus return. I did that backwards on purpose. Now we're going to go out of the stereo bus into tie line 3, which goes out of tie line 3 at the island into the compressor. So you see how we've gone out in through the tie lines. Is that the end?